Okay, we got a very cool kit here today that we want to show you. This is, in my opinion, probably the rarest and most unusual of the Ludwig top hat and cane kits that we've ever seen, heard of, handled, etc. These kits were made basically in 1941, and they were only made for about a year. They were very expensive. They generally had an 11-inch tom, a 13-inch tom, a 26-inch bass drum, 6.5 by 14 snare, and a 14-inch deep by 16-inch floor tom in a cradle. This particular set was built differently, number one, and number two, was built at a different time. The snare drum is date stamped 1946. Everything on the snare drum is correct, and I'm going to walk you through these drum by drum. The snare drum's got the correct 3-point strainer on it. It's also got the correct 3-position switch that was part of the strainer made at that period of time. It's also got the extended butt plate. Everything on it is original. It's date stamped 1946. Very unusual. What we suspect here is that this drum set was made as a special request for someone in these sizes and at a later date than normal and made with leftover material, which is nothing unusual because if you had a request, they'd do it. There's a couple of different unusual things about this. One of them is that the snare drum and this very unusual floor tom, which we'll talk about later, actually the 13 and the floor tom are drums that have the white badge, which you can see right here, which is period correct for that era. And for some reason, and I cannot explain why, the bass drum and the snare drum have the brass badge. You can see one on the bass drum. It's the same. I've looked at the interiors of these drums. The interiors on the 13 and on this very unusual floor tom are clear interiors. They are date stamped. The date is hard to read on both of them, but it appears to be 940 something. On the mounted tom, there is penciled in the date 1946. On the floor tom, there is a stamp of 45, so it appears that that was 45. The other thing that's unusual about this is that that's a 14-inch floor tom. That was never cataloged. It's a 12 by 14, 12 inches deep, 14-inch head. It's got 7 lugs, imperial casings, and it's got period correct floor tom legs. I looked at the interiors, the hardware, everything on both the 13, the 9 by 13, and the 12 by 14, and everything is identical. The drums look like they were made at exactly the same time in the same period. All the rims are correct and the same. The clips, tension rods, everything. So it's a very unusual piece. The bass drum is a 14 by 26. The snare drum's a 6.5 by 14. On the bass drum, the inlays are replacements because the original inlays were missing. So this is modern top hat and cane replacement inlay, which is actually a fairly nice match for it. Very unusual kit. Now I'm going to show you something. I'm going to have to take this tom off for a second. I'm going to show you something on the bass drum where there's been a little bit of repair work done on some of the wrap itself. Now, if we look right here, can we get a good shot of this? You see some surface cracks where the wrap had lifted. I know where this set has been for the last probably, since the 50s. It happened to have been housed in a music store. And this bass drum was hanging from the ceiling. And it was actually a little bit close to a heat vent, so we had some cracking occur just in the wrap itself, that this had been lifted. Also, I want to show you, if you can see down here, you see this little gap where it's a little whiter? What we were able to do, we had someone do a little work on this where they were able to lift this up, move this part of the wrap just a tiny bit so we could lay down these seams and glue it down so it would be flush. So the little bit of cracking that you see here, and there's a little bit of surface, just a little bit of surface lift in the wrap right here. The wrap is all laid down again, glued down so it's nice and smooth, and this again is away from anywhere that it's visible on the drum because it's far to the side and toward the bottom. that is the only thing that we can find as any sort of an issue at all with the set. And that's a very, very minor issue. This tom mount is a period correct clamp-on mount that would hold a rack tom. Normally, the original catalog set with an 11-inch tom and a 13-inch tom quite often had a rail that went all the way across the bass drum and the clamps clamped onto the rail. This was never drilled for that rail, so there's every indication that this set, as you see it, was custom ordered much later than normal, since it's from 45-46 time frame, and with sizes very different than normal in terms of the toms. This has 6.5 by 14, 9 by 13, 12 by 14 floor tom, 14 by 26 bass drum. It's got clamp-on spurs on the bass drum. Everything else on this set, everything on this set is correct. There's nothing wrong. Everything is right. The badges have not been modified. There's been no removal of badges on the inside. The bearing edges are original. As I said, the 13 and the 14 have a clear interior. The snare drum and the bass drum, white painted interior. The set's been all together, as we mentioned, since where it's been located in a music store was there since the 50s, and they took it in complete as you see it here. So, there you have it. It's very, very rare, exceedingly rare. You'll find this up on the website. It's in my Illinois store in Naperville, Illinois. You'll see it up on the web at www.maxwelldrums.com. Price on the set is $27,500. Considering what's here, that's a great price. I sold the finest known example of a traditional top hat and cane set that sold for far more than that, and other examples, the few that do show up, have sold for substantial amounts of money as well. This particular set's the only one of its kind I've ever seen in this configuration, so arguably this may be in fact the rarest of any top hat and cane set. Kind of an interesting little animal here. Why there's 7 lugs on the floor tom, I cannot answer the question. Don't know. But there it is, and it is original, it's not altered, and it's a very, very unusual set. So, www.maxwelldrums.com, or give us a call if we can give you more information on it. Thanks.